All right. So we have made it to attorney review. You have hypothetically accepted an offer and you are now ready to begin the attorney review process. So, what is attorney review? Well, theoretically, attorney review is the opportunity to have your attorney guide you through the contract that you already signed, but it's also an opportunity to modify the contract, to receive guidance on your rights and your responsibilities, to remove some things from the contract that you signed, and to negotiate it with the other side. So in this case, we're sellers, right? So we would be negotiating with the buyer side. So the theory of attorney review is that you will have an attorney guiding you, explaining to you that the way this provision, for example, is written is how it will impact you hypothetically in the following situations. So it really gives you a chance to understand what could happen in a real estate transaction going forward as a seller and how that contract will support you in that case. And the way that you find out through the guidance of your attorney how certain things will flow, you will be able to say during the attorney review process, well, that doesn't fly with me. Like, I'm not okay with that. I want it to be this way, or I want it to be that way. So you don't just get guidance, but you also have the opportunity to talk it out with your attorney and make changes so that the way that you ideally want it to be is the way that it gets presented to the other side. Now, that doesn't guarantee that what you want is going to be what you get. However, the attorney is there to guide you and negotiate on your behalf with the other side to do their best that they possibly can to get that provision to be drafted in the way that you want it to be. And so the other side will do the same thing for their client. And the negotiation basically goes back and forth through documents that get drafted. So essentially, it's like contract terms are getting honed and getting chiseled down through email being sent back and forth from the seller's attorney side to the buyer's attorney side until they get to a point where you, with reviewing it with your lawyer, you don't have any changes that you need to see made, and neither does the other side. When that happens, that is when attorney review is officially concluded. And so during the attorney review process, that opens the door up for you to, as the seller, accept other offers if you'd like. You can cancel the contract. Let's say something happens and you find that you actually can't sell the property anymore. During attorney review, you can cancel the contract for any reason whatsoever. You actually don't need to have a reason at all. And the buyers, the same thing goes for them. So you might be wondering, maybe that's why there's all this pressure around attorney review. And that's the reality, is that it's true that there is all this pressure around the attorney review process because you and the buyer can cancel. So especially the agents who have been working with you for months and working with the buyers for months, you can feel a lot of pressure and anxiety around getting out of attorney review as fast as possible. But you don't want to let that pressure put you in a place where you're compromising on your rights and your responsibilities. So that's where we come in as the attorneys, is we really kind of put a pause on all that pressure so that you can feel really solid in the quality of the provisions and how they're being drafted, and that you also know that we are looking at it from the perspective of what's best for you. And if that means that attorney review doesn't go forward because the buyers are putting the provisions in a way that severely jeopardized your rights and they're not willing to budge, that you can say, you know what, even though, we've been going through this process for so long, there's no way that I am willing to kind of lay myself down and agree to the terms on the other side, for example. And we're also going to be there to be able to tell you, like, if something is reasonable or unreasonable, or if it's customary that what the buyers put down is actually something that we see often, because that may, change your position on something that you might otherwise be stuck on. So the attorney review process is really that time where you get to like slow down and take a look at all the provisions and really learn how the rest of the transaction process is going to work. So the major things that come up in the attorney review process that can get sticky for both buyers and sellers are: one, how the inspection contingency is negotiated; two, how certain things like the permit results, the permit search results, or the due diligence of the buyer, basically the buyer trying to carve out exits from the transaction so that they can have rights to cancel without losing their deposit. So all of those types of situations where the buyer may be putting in contingency language, that's what really comes up as like the sticky parts of attorney review that you will probably be going back and forth on a few times with your attorney. And I can only talk about these things generally and hypothetically at this point because we don't have a contract in front of us. This is, guidance for you for general knowledge. But just know that the purpose and the goal of the attorney is to read the attorney review provisions coming from the other side and asking themselves, if this happens, am I comfortable with how this impacts my client? Does this sound reasonable? Is this customary? How does this impact them negatively? And are we able to push back on this? And so the goal of the attorney review process is really to set the stage for creating paths for certain things that could possibly come up in the future. A note to also keep in the back of your mind is that sometimes the attorney review provisions can get sticky about things that may never happen, but they are being negotiated because it's possible that they will. So it can be a little stressful because you can be hashing out terms and maybe going back and forth on something that literally never happens in your transaction specifically. But the goal of it is to have something there that's clear and concise in case something does happen. So if you understand that the goal is to protect you, right? Your attorney has to lay out a path for hypothetical things that they know could happen, but those things might actually not happen in your transaction. So that's something to also keep in the back of your mind. What can help you with understanding and being prepared for attorney review is to kind of know in your mind what types of things you are willing to kind of do with respect to home inspections, or if you know that you made repairs to your property without permits, or if you know that certain work was performed at your property because of some type of environmental issue. It's important to talk to your attorney about these things that occurred at the property so that you can be prepared to handle them appropriately during the attorney review process, because you also have to use that time to notify the buyer of any defects that you're aware of with property. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to kind of unearth things that you otherwise don't know, but you have to definitely notify the other side of certain things that you are aware of. And you can talk to your attorney about that so that they guide you on how to appropriately do that. And that's something that we definitely take time to do with our clients. Also, another thing is to note is that the buyers will be looking to ask you as the seller to make certain representations about things that you might otherwise know. So it's important to let your attorney know as you read through the document together, oh, I'm definitely not aware of that, or I'm not too sure about that type of thing that the buyer is asking me to represent, and to make sure that your attorney is stating that any representation that you do make is to the best of your own knowledge. And what that means is that you're not a professional, you're not a licensed contractor, although if you are, you should probably tell your attorney that too. But that you're just making statements to the best of your own knowledge and not as a professional, not as a licensed individual, and that you also are basically saying, like, I think this to be true, but I'm not really sure, right? But to the best of my knowledge, I think that's true. So walking through the contract with your attorney and seeing what parts of the contract the buyers are trying to get you to say things. And a common example of this is the seller represents that they have never experienced leaking in the basement, right? So let's say, to the best of your knowledge, you have not, but the buyers have a home inspection and the home inspector finds that there's a little leak, like in this corner behind a wall that you never saw, or you don't go there because you have storage. And you're like, you're really not aware that there's a leak happening there, right? So in the contract, you would say, or in the attorney review process, which becomes the contract, you would say, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware of that, right? And that's all you need to do to protect yourself from that circumstance. Now, if you did know that there was a leak and you say, no, I'm not aware, that would be a fraudulent misrepresentation. So that's something that you would want to definitely go over with your attorney. And the attorney review process is the opportunity to do that. So, other than that, the attorney review process can take as long as it needs to. And so the whole 3-day rule that you'll probably hear about as you embark on this journey is that attorney review must begin within 3 days, but it can also take as long as it needs to complete. So the goal is to go through the process quickly, but it could take time to complete it because you and the other side are really, working on massaging through some terms. So once attorney review ends, that is when you are officially under contract and when you now can't cancel the contract for any reason at all, and the buyer can't either. So now, the next video that we'll be going over is what exactly happens after attorney review. And I'll be talking to you specifically about how our office handles post-attorney review. And that's not going, post-attorney review all the way into the future. It's just what actually happens. So now we're out of review. What do we need to do next, right? Or how do I know what comes next? So that's what this next video is going to be all about. And I look forward to seeing you